knocking on it.
Yeah, you hear it?
I hear it. It feels like stone.
Well, that's a pretty big one.
Scratching my knuckles.
Petrified wood in Mississippi. Is that not awesome?
Is evident of its long, rough, watery journey as driftwood tree. As you walk by, you are seeing a large trunk section of this huge petrified log. Look back to see the eyes, nose, and mouth, which earned this log the nickname of frog. It has been calculated that this one piece of petrified log weighs 14,940 pounds.
So this is the frog stone.
The frog. The natural shape and grain of the larger piece of petrified wood indicates it was the trunk area near the once living tree roots. All pieces of petrified wood in the petrified forest are in natural positions, just as erosion moved them away from the engulfing sands. These pieces suggest more petrified wood may still live deeply buried here. Caveman's bench is a part of the log still embedded in the cliff wall beside it. You can see many segments that make up the length of this huge, still half-buried log. The exposed part of the stone log is about 40 feet long. It will give you a good close-up of petrified wood. It's all right to sit on it. Look.
There you go. Look at all this stuff.
Wait, you didn't take the best picture.
My goodness, look at this. Yep.
Forming natural dens, these hollow, petrified logs are all part of one tree trunk that has decayed some before it came here. The dens are used by smaller wildlife of the forest, such as rabbits or raccoons. The many petrified wood sections on the hill are scattered just as exposed by the weather of many years. Erosion is a very powerful force. A few raindrops won't move much soil, but the millions of raindrops falling during a single thunderstorm can prove there is great strength in nature. A natural camouflage of pine needles and leaves nearly covers some log sections on this hill. Several species of lichen can be seen here on the petrified logs. Pine straw, as the needles on the ground are called, have fallen leaves as ground cover, help to keep in moisture and thus slow and assist in healing areas of erosion. Rough external appearance of the petrified logs look like bark, but these patterns are caused by the effect of rain and wind action. In winter, moisture is sometimes absorbed into tiny surface cracks on the log where it can freeze, causing chipping or flaking. Over time, natural forces will affect the outer layers of all the logs. The application of petrified wood is complicated. It must be cut with a diamond saw, then ground into paper-thin slices, studied under a microscope. Preserved cell structures seen in this thin section can reveal the type of tree it was. Wow. We got a lot of pieces here. Ooh, and there's a little. The center of this petrified log group is an 8 to 10 foot diameter section. The base of this piece near the roots indicate that it was a huge tree. It stood over 100 feet tall and was centuries old. Then 36 to 38 million years ago, the ancient tree was down, only to become a driftwood log. Finally, it would be carried far and deposited here by the prehistoric river. Absence of roots, branches, or barks tells us of that rough river journey from the driftwood tree trunk. They were buried here quickly and deeply enough to preserve them. As you move along, you will see numerous other log sections on both sides of the trail. About 50 years ago, these log sections were being eroded near the top of the Ojai Badlands cliff wall. The main replacement minerals in the petrified logs are forms of the mineral silica, which is known as quartz, also known as chalcedony and common opal.
Opal?
Yep. These logs are considered to be complete mineral replacements with no original wood left. The few hollow logs you see along the trail already had areas of decay in their trunks long before they arrived here. The earliest sighting of petrified wood in this area on record occurred in 1854, a few years before the Civil War began, but its discovery was little known. The petrified log sections that washed out of the former Badlands over a long time gradually moved farther apart. The forces of wind and rain continued year after year, and the higher land receded slowly. By the 1930s, a numerous log had become visible as changes took place with every rain. Years later, the rugged Badland formations slowly became lower, moving farther apart as valley and gullies between them began to become much larger. The geological name of the red sands in the wall is Forest Hill Formation, 36 to 38 million years ago. It is the original rich deposit in which the driftwood logs were buried. Near the upper edge of the cliff was a tan soil layer called losses, formed during the Ice Age. This is how the sand under your feet. Glaciers of the north pulverized all, and they were moved south and began to melt. Runoff water carried the losses southward to deposit it by waves and currents on the flooding plains and shores of the prehistoric. It was here this dust dried, becoming a fine light soil. Picked up by the blowing winds, the losses created terrible dust storms. This dust became a deep wind-blown deposit covering the Forest Hill Formation in great depth. Losses became the top layer of soil here, perhaps less than 1 million years ago. This petrified log section shows how well nature forces of erosion can expose a long-buried log. With the same forces of rain and wind, it can reclaim it, slowly and gently covering it again. Soils and sands that erode from the higher ravine walls are all ready to be used again. This is a natural process that will continue on through time. You may be able to see a section of petrified log just beginning to erode out of the enclosing soil. How long will it take to become fully exposed to the sight of man is not known. It is beginning to uncover the lowest red sands of the Forest Hill Formation. The depth of this formation can vary from 40 feet to over 100 feet in the petrified forest. This indicates that there may be more petrified logs still buried and still to be uncovered by the same forces of nature in the future. In 1962, when a deep water well was being drilled not too far away on this property, a petrified log was struck and drilled through at a depth of 75 feet.
Jesus.
The hills of the Mississippi Petrified Forest are among the highest in this immediate area. being about 360 feet above sea level. During the Civil War in 1863 and 1864, many thousands of soldiers bivouacked on the same hill and marched on the old slave trade road, not visible here. These soldiers were from the armies of both sides. Group of petrified logs identified as Flora. No living counterpart. Does that mean that it is? In this area, you might see small flakes of brown rock known as limonite. This is a very low grade of iron ore, deposited here when iron-laden groundwaters reach areas underlying the Forest Hill Formation, formed by impervious clay areas of Yazoo clays, were deposited here before the Forest Hill sands and driftwood tree. Right there.
You see a critter in a forest?
Yes, it's a well-known domesticated cat. So very few you see in the woods.
Really?
Yes, it's called domesticated kitty cat. Reaching the end of the nature trail, you will enter the Earth Science Museum, featuring displays of petrified wood, fossils, and minerals, as well as gemstones from around the world. This museum concludes your tour. The exit returns you to the Visitor Center and gift shop, where you begin the natural trail. Be sure to see the outdoor patio shop, the black light mini mine, or hunt for gems at our flume.